In one of my first videos uploaded to the channel, I talked about why blind Overwatch was poor, and I think teams should start scouting. And revisiting that theory of scouting and how it applies to Overwatch, I do have to admit that teams have started scouting, and I think that's really awesome. But I think there's more to be developed there, and I think there's a lot more to be explored. So, first, let's talk about what scouting is. So, scouting to me is an advance of a resource, whether it be a player or a position, that is allowing your team to gain information during that first couple seconds in Overwatch specifically, where it is just completely blind, where you're not, necessarily able to tell exactly what the enemy team comp is. After about 10 to 15 seconds, the game basically tells you at that point what the enemy is running, and that's a very strong advantage that you're trying to ignore. With that first scout, whether it be on defense or attack, I think both sides can do this. Using that early information to better equip yourself, whether it be in a position, whether it be a specific hero that you're using, better equipping yourself for this incoming attack or taking this incoming attack as the defending team is so important and can actually change your percentage or your win percentage of this upcoming fight by upwards of 20% or something. Now, how do we go about doing this? Now, there's a couple ways that teams have been doing it, and I think there are some ways that teams could do this in the future that could be explored a little bit more. And that's not to say that it's these theoretical ways of scouting are the most optimal, but I think that they have been explored but could be developed further. So obviously, on attack, because you are sat in your spawn, able to change heroes at will, every team, no matter what, should be doing what I call a Hanzo scout. And you started to see this on Junkertown specifically, where early on into that map's kind of sub-meta game, teams would hold very aggressively, and you could scout them out, or you could scout out very aggressive positions in the spawn with Hanzo. So you'd have your main tank swap Hanzo, recon arrow a corner to check if people were there. They would swap back to Winston or Reinhardt or Orisa or whatever they were running, and somebody else would grab Hanzo and recon arrow another area. This should be pretty standard for most maps. I think a map like Rialto could see this, and I do believe that teams are starting to do this. But this should just be a industry standard that everybody does this, and it's not even a question that you should do it on every map. While certain maps might not have that aggressive tendency that teams tend to do to hold aggressively at your spawn door, just the knowledge of knowing that they aren't there is knowledge in and of itself. So we know that we aren't dealing with something in front of us. Now, when the doors open and when the match begins, you should still scout with Hanzo. So in positions that are a little bit more, not as aggressive, but still equally pretty aggressive, something like the first train car on Route 66, a place that people tend to sit if they're looking for a quick team fight victory, or they're looking for some sort of strange gimmick strategy, that should be scouted. Another position, Hanamura A, attack. So kind of put yourself in that mindset. In the cafe of like the ramen shop, teams will sit there. It's not often, but teams can do that. So just leading out with a recon arrow just to check either will give you the information you need to defend that specific kind of strange strategy, or tell you that they aren't there, and that's just peace of mind going forward, that nobody can be in that position because we've scouted it with recon arrow. This can be applied to every map, and every team should do it. No questions asked. You do see teams do that, but I don't think it's as standard as I would like. Now you're starting to see teams, specifically on attack, run Sombra a lot more. She's becoming a lot more meta in the West, and in the East it's still catching on. I still think it's very popular, but it's not as popular as what some of the Western teams are running. Now, what teams are doing on attack with her, and what I had mentioned in this video, is she stealths in. Now that she has permanent stealth, it's much easier to get a full grasp of information. At the time of me making the video, she still had a timer on her invisibility. But now that she has infinite stealth, she can run in, leave a translocator in spawn, scout the enemy team, scout their positioning, scout what composition they're running, teleport back, the team swaps or she swaps, and then you proceed with your attack with a game plan in mind. Now, the attackers can do this, but the defenders, I still think, could do this. And I think that a strategy that I believe New York employed, specifically on Watchpoint Gibraltar, can be used here on specific maps. So maps like Watchpoint Gibraltar, like Rialto, like Blizzard World, like Nimbani, things that are maps that have either a strong defense respawn or the fact that the line of sight from the defensive spawn is very accessible. So for instance, to better explain this, because it's pretty difficult to explain, so I'll give examples. Nimbani point A defense, for obviously the defense. A lot of there have been strategies that put your Ana on the low ground quite far back, and the team plays within her line of sight. So if, for instance, my Ana player is playing Sombra off the start, leaves a translocator in the point A defense spawn, and plays very aggressively almost to the spawn door of the attacking team comes out, she sees that, she communicates that to her team, she teleports all the way back to spawn, swaps Ana, or maybe even Lucio, and can get back to the point before the fight even begins. Now the defense has a little bit more onus. They can reposition. They can even make some sort of halfway swap. I think that's a little bit more theoretical, meaning that you're giving up positions, but you're supposed to, in my kind of weird mind, in this strange theory, that you're not necessarily holding rigid positions on the map. You're kind of standing halfway, giving up a lot of space, but also have the flexibility to rotate back, to swap to a composition that might, counter the attacker's composition, and then play from there. So you're developing a strategy that's giving up space for the luxury of kind of actively swapping against the attacking team, which usually is the attacking team's luxury. They get to use the swapping because you're favoring the more defensive positions. There could be a time in the future that the defense has a better way of dealing with that with their own swapping, by not necessarily committing to the high ground at some points and committing very deep into the point. Now, how can we work these halfway swaps is what I'm kind of calling them. You could kind of shuttle people back with Lucio. They could start off with something like a Sombra. They could just position halfway between the actual point and the spawn room, get that information from your Sombra on defense. Again, this is a defensive kind of theory that I have, and then have them rotate out. Have them run back, swap if need be, and if not, you can still take a good amount of ground back in a very quick setup. There is a lot of preparation involved, but I think there's a lot of room to be explored on how we're using early information, how we're developing strategies around that, and how we're scouting the enemy team on both sides, both defensively and offensively. Whereas, in Overwatch League Season 1, we saw D.Va scouting becoming very, very popular. I still think not every team is consistently Hanzo checking everything they can. I don't think teams are really abusing Sombra to the fullest extent of her abusableness. I still think Tracer still is quite viable if Sombra was to be removed from the game. I still think she does the job fairly well. Not to mention that, but with my prediction that I think Overwatch League Season 2 and Season 3 will be developing more and more niche and cheesy kind of gimmick strategies, scouting is going to be one of the most important things that teams can do, and abusing that information. So having this strange metagame with information and scouting is starting to be developed. We saw that in season 1. Dallas Fuel, one of my favorite plays on Hanamura. I think it was against Florida. And again, I made a video about it. Siegel approaches the point and shows Manitens that he's playing one hero. Maniten sees that, he communicates it with his team, they position for it. What Siegel then does is rotates back, swaps to another hero, and they continue to push. That throws Florida off guard because they were positioning for a specific hero, that hero was swapped, and now they're having to, at the last second, reposition for this other strategy that this one hero now allows Dallas Fuel to use. So you're going to see that continuously developed and explored. So, without rambling too much onto this, and I sound like a crazy person, scouting's important. I can't wait to see Overwatch really embrace cheesy picks, gimmick strategy, and how to deal with it, I think, is scouting. And just abuse that information, those first 15 seconds, 15 to 20 seconds, where the enemy team is not kind of unveiled to you, is ripe for development and potential swaps that put you in favor. So hopefully that made a lot of sense. If it didn't, that's fair too. And if it didn't, maybe better explain it in the comment section down below, or maybe subscribe to help a brother out. And maybe one day I'll be able to explain it better if I have more subscribers. So thanks for watching, guys. And until the next time I see you in another video, I will see you in another video. Take care.